You won't believe this. Sugar affects your body almost exactly like a stimulant drug. Just minutes after you eat it, sugar triggers a surge of dopamine in your brain, forces your pancreas to pump out maximum insulin, pushes your liver into overload, damages your blood vessels, and makes your kidneys filter in an inflamed environment. And all of this happens before you even feel the sweetness. In this video, we break down each organ in a scientific, simple, and crystal clear way so you can understand why too much sugar is far more dangerous than it looks. If you consume sugary foods every day, this is the video you need to watch before it's too late. The journey of sugar begins the moment you take your first bite, and surprisingly, absorption starts right there in your mouth. Inside the oral cavity, the enzyme amylase in saliva starts breaking down starches into simpler sugars. For refined sugars like sucrose or glucose, the body doesn't even need to wait for the small intestine. A portion is absorbed directly through the mucous membrane in the mouth. While the amount is small, it's enough to send an immediate sugar has entered signal to the brain and pancreas. As you swallow, the sugar moves quickly through the esophagus and into the stomach. Here's something most people don't know. The stomach doesn't digest sugar. There are no enzymes here designed to process glucose or fructose. However, because of sugar's simple molecular structure and high solubility, it doesn't stay in the stomach for long. It slips almost directly into the small intestine, creating a sugar wave that floods your bloodstream just minutes after eating. This rapid absorption is exactly what causes a sudden blood sugar spike, a glucose surge. You might feel it. A slight increase in heart rate, a temporary boost in alertness, maybe even a hint of euphoria. But beneath that lies a cascade of biological consequences. The body must respond immediately to pull sugar out of the bloodstream, and that's when the pancreas, liver, and brain are forced into overdrive. But it all began with a single bite in your mouth. And so, after slipping past the stomach, sugar meets virtually no resistance. In the small intestine specifically, the jejunum absorption happens at incredible speed. This is where your body absorbs nearly all simple sugars, glucose, fructose, galactose, through active transport and facilitated diffusion. For every spoonful of sugar you consume, the small intestine pushes an equivalent amount of glucose into the bloodstream almost instantly, especially if the sugar isn't paired with fiber or protein, which would normally slow absorption. The sudden rise in blood glucose isn't just a normal fluctuation, it's a mild metabolic shock. Within minutes, blood sugar can spike from a baseline of 90 mg divided by DL to over 140, 160 mg divided by DL, depending on how fast you digest and how much sugar you consumed. This is known as a glucose spike, and your body can't afford to ignore it. The pancreas immediately releases insulin, a hormone that acts as a key to move glucose into cells. But insulin doesn't just shuttle sugar into muscles. If insulin levels are elevated frequently and for long periods, it triggers a cascade of side effects. Fat storage increases, and cell sensitivity to insulin begins to decrease, a state known as insulin resistance. This is the groundwork for major metabolic issues like prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and increased visceral fat. What's striking is that the small intestine is incredibly efficient, even too efficient at getting sugar into your blood. And that efficiency, when abused by a high-sugar diet, becomes a biological vulnerability. The digestive system was designed to process natural sugars from whole fruits, not refined sugars hidden in ultra-processed foods. And when glucose keeps pouring in uncontrollably, the pancreas isn't the only organ that suffers. The liver is next, and it will bear a heavy burden. As blood glucose surges after a meal, the body must act quickly to restore internal balance. The pancreas, a small gland located behind the stomach, plays a critical role at this point. It secretes insulin, a hormone that works like a key, unlocking cell membranes so that glucose can enter, where it's either used for energy or stored as glycogen. This system functions well when glucose enters the bloodstream at a steady, natural pace. But when you consume large amounts of sugar, especially refined sugar and high glycemic carbohydrates, the pancreas is forced to work overtime, releasing insulin rapidly and in large quantities. Initially, your body can handle this. But if it happens daily over months or years, cells start to ignore insulin signal. This is called insulin resistance, and it's one of the most dangerous metabolic dysfunctions today. Insulin resistance doesn't happen overnight, but it develops silently. Early signs might include increased sugar cravings, belly fat accumulation, post-meal fatigue, dark patches on the neck or underarms, and a slight rise in blood pressure. Left unchecked, this leads to prediabetes and eventually type 2 diabetes, where the pancreas becomes exhausted from prolonged overwork. But the damage doesn't stop there. Chronically high insulin levels promote fat storage, especially in the abdominal area, the kind of visceral fat that fuels systemic inflammation, disrupts hormonal balance, and increases the risk of heart disease, cancer, and fatty liver. Research also links elevated insulin to hormonal disorders, cognitive decline, and stubborn weight gain. And while the pancreas struggles to keep up, the liver, the main processor of fructose, is entering its own crisis. Unlike glucose, fructose cannot be used directly by muscle cells. It heads straight to the liver, and what happens there is far more dangerous than most people realize. While glucose can be directly used by nearly every cell in the body, fructose cannot. Muscle cells, brain cells, and fat cells do not absorb fructose directly. Instead, every bit of fructose you consume, from sodas, fruit juice, corn syrup, to table sugar, must be processed exclusively by the liver, and this is where a silent crisis begins. The liver is designed to handle small amounts of fructose from whole fruits. But when you consume excessive added sugar, especially from ultra-processed foods, the liver is forced to work far beyond its natural limits. When fructose intake exceeds processing capacity, the liver begins converting the excess into fat, especially visceral fat, the dangerous type of fat that wraps around internal organs and isn't visible on the outside. This process leads to a condition known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, now rising rapidly worldwide, even among children. It's the first stage of a dangerous metabolic cascade. Fat accumulates inside liver cells, triggering low-grade chronic inflammation, and over time can progress into steatohepatitis, fibrosis, and even cirrhosis. Worse yet, a sugar-overloaded liver also produces more triglycerides and VLDL cholesterol, unhealthy blood fats that raise the risk of atherosclerosis, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. Studies also show that fatty liver is directly linked to insulin resistance, meaning the liver itself becomes a contributor to blood sugar dysfunction throughout the body. What's concerning is that early-stage fatty liver often presents no obvious symptoms. You may feel fine, while your liver is already accumulating fat, inflammation, and reduced capacity. And while the liver struggles to manage fructose, the brain is being affected by sugar in an entirely different way through the dopamine system. While the liver deals with the physical fallout of sugar, the brain is affected in a completely different way through the neural reward system centered around dopamine. This neurotransmitter is responsible for motivation, pleasure, focus, and habit formation. And here's the catch. Sugar, especially refined sugar, is a powerful dopamine trigger. Within minutes of sugar consumption, dopamine levels spike in the brain's nucleus, accompanies the same pleasure and motivation center activated by certain drugs. This results in feelings of euphoria, alertness, and satisfaction similar to the initial rush from addictive substances. That's why a bite of candy or cake can instantly lift your mood. But dopamine doesn't stay elevated for long. After peaking, it drops quickly, leaving you feeling tired, sluggish, irritable, and unfocused. Here lies the danger. To feel that high again, the brain starts prompting you to seek more sugar, triggering a cycle of reward, crash craving, known as the sugar addiction loop. Over time, if the brain is overstimulated by sugar too often, the dopamine system begins to desensitize, meaning you need more sugar just to feel the same joy as before. This not only promotes overeating, but also impairs behavioral control, short-term memory, and attention. Studies show that long-term high sugar intake is linked to reduced function in the hippocampus, a brain region crucial for learning and memory. Moreover, high sugar diets are associated with mood disorders, increased risk of depression and anxiety, The irony is this: the very foods that make you feel good fast are silently disrupting the system that controls your emotions and logical thinking. And while your brain is caught in the dopamine loop, your blood vessels are beginning to suffer because high blood sugar doesn't just affect hormones. It also erodes the physical architecture of your body from the inside out. When blood sugar remains consistently elevated, the body doesn't just face hormonal disruption, it also begins to suffer structural damage at the cellular level, especially within the blood vessels. This is where a lesser-known but extremely dangerous process unfolds: glycation, the bonding of sugar with proteins. When glucose, or fructose, circulates in excess, it attaches to proteins and lipids in the body, forming harmful compounds known as AGE's advanced glycation end products. These sugar-coated molecules are difficult to eliminate and have the ability to distort the natural structure of connective tissues. Blood vessels, rich in collagen and elastin, are prime targets for AG damage. When collagen becomes stiff and misshapen, vessels lose elasticity, becoming hardened and thickened. This leads to increased blood pressure, as the heart must pump harder to circulate blood throughout the body. Worse still, AGs trigger long-term inflammatory responses in the vessel walls, resulting in chronic vascular inflammation. As this continues, atherosclerotic plaques begin to form, fats, cholesterol, and dead immune cells accumulate at damaged sites, leading to arterial narrowing and stiffness. This sets the stage for major cardiovascular events: stroke, heart attack, and cerebral embolism. Many young adults with sugar-heavy diets seemingly normal are silently accumulating arterial plaque, unaware of the danger. A prolonged glucose spike doesn't just exhaust the pancreas, irritate the liver, or trigger mood swings, it erodes your blood vessels from the inside out. And here's the cruel part: sugar doesn't strike like a sudden attacker. It corrodes slowly, with every harmless sweet treat. Your body doesn't scream in pain, but the damage is underway. And as blood vessels weaken, the kidneys, your primary blood filters, become the next organ in the firing line. Once blood sugar is temporarily managed by insulin, the excess that isn't used for energy gets converted into fat. This is an ancient survival mechanism. The body stores excess fuel in case of future scarcity. But in modern life, where sugar is abundant and physical activity is limited, this mechanism has become a leading driver of obesity and metabolic disorders. When insulin levels stay high for extended periods, the body interprets this as a surplus of energy and shifts into fat storage mode, converting glucose into fat, primarily in strategic areas like the abdomen and around vital organs such as the liver, heart, and kidneys. This type of fat is called visceral fat, and unlike subcutaneous fat under the skin, visceral fat is a dangerous internal storage depot. It doesn't just take up space or squeeze your organs, it acts like a hormone-secreting tissue, releasing inflammatory cytokines like IL-6 and TNF-alpha, and disrupting metabolic hormones like leptin and adiponectin. What's the result? Chronic low-grade inflammation spreads throughout the body. Appetite regulation becomes impaired, fat burning slows down, and the body shifts into constant storage mode. That's why many people find it harder to lose weight the more they try, because insulin and visceral fat have already disrupted their internal energy regulation systems. Research shows visceral fat is directly linked to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and even cognitive decline. And the scariest part? You can look thin but still have high visceral fat, a condition known as TOFI, thin outside, fat inside. While belly fat is visible, visceral fat is the silent threat. And as this hidden fat builds up, the kidneys, your blood filtration organs, are forced to operate in an inflamed, hormone-disrupted, toxin-loaded environment. When blood sugar remains elevated over time, the small blood vessels, especially the microcapillaries in the kidneys, are among the first to suffer damage. The kidneys function as a blood filtration plant, containing millions of microscopic units called nephrons. Each nephron works like a high-precision coffee filter, retaining essential substances and removing toxins and waste through urine. But when blood carries too much sugar continuously, nephrons begin to deteriorate. Excess glucose damages the endothelial lining of the capillaries, disrupting the delicate filtration process. Think of it like dumping too much sugar into a coffee filter. The fine pores become clogged, the output becomes murky, and internal pressure builds. Over time, the nephrons become inflamed, scarred, and lose their ability to function properly. One of the earliest warning signs of sugar-related kidney damage is the presence of albumin in the urine, a condition called albuminuria. Normally, albumin is retained in the blood, but when the nephron's filter is damaged, it leaks through, like coffee grounds slipping into your cup, a clear sign that the filter is compromised. Additionally, sugar-affected kidneys are more prone to kidney stone formation, as excess sugar alters urinary calcium, oxalate levels, and pH. Not to mention, reduced filtration capacity leads to toxin buildup in the body, causing fatigue, headaches, hypertension, and widespread metabolic disruption. Once kidney function starts to decline, it's not just your urine that's affected, your entire internal balance begins to falter. And the scary part is, kidney damage often progresses silently, without noticeable symptoms in early stages. By the time it's detected, a significant percentage of filtration ability may already be lost. And when your liver, pancreas, blood vessels, brain, and kidneys are all compromised, what comes next? Your immune system, the body's final line of defense, begins to weaken under the constant storm called sugar. When the pancreas is overworked, the liver overloaded, blood vessels damaged, and the kidneys impaired, you might think your body has reached its limit. But there's still one final shield left: the immune system. And unfortunately, sugar doesn't spare this last line of defense. Multiple studies have shown that just 20–30 minutes after sugar intake, the ability of white blood cells, especially neutrophils, to kill pathogens can drop by up to 40% for several hours. This happens because elevated blood glucose interferes with phagocytosis, the process by which immune cells engulf and destroy bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Think of it this way. If a team of immune soldiers could normally eliminate 10 invaders per hour after a sugary drink or dessert, their efficiency drops to 6. And when sugar is consumed frequently, day after day, this immune defense becomes chronically weakened, making the body more vulnerable to inflammation, infection, and unexplained fatigue. The immune system isn't just your flu-fighting army. It's deeply involved in many processes: cleaning up damaged cells, detecting early cancer, and regulating inflammation across the body. But when sugar causes chronic low-grade inflammation, the immune system is forced to operate under constant stress, eventually leading to system-wide exhaustion. Additionally, sugar disrupts the gut microbiome, where 70–80% of the body's immune cells reside. An imbalance between beneficial and harmful bacteria leaves the immune system disoriented, more likely to misfire, triggering inflammation, allergies, or even autoimmune disease. In short, sugar doesn't just harm one organ. It unleashes a silent storm that spreads through every biological system, from energy, brain, metabolism, immunity. And that storm often begins with something as innocent as bubble tea, a pastry, or a natural fruit juice. From a single slice of cake to that harmless can of soda, sugar doesn't just taste sweet. It triggers an intricate cascade of biological responses. If you followed along this far, one thing should be clear. This isn't about one molecule of sugar, it's about a metabolic domino effect. Too much sugar spikes glucose, triggers excess insulin, promotes fat accumulation, especially visceral fat, leads to chronic inflammation, damages blood vessels, and eventually harms the liver, kidneys, heart, brain, and immune system. No organ is truly safe when your body is flooded with sugar on a daily basis. But remember this: your body doesn't hate sugar, it hates sugar overload. Glucose is essential fuel. Fructose from fruit is beneficial when used wisely. The issue lies in the quantity, not the substance. Your biology simply wasn't designed to handle 20–30 teaspoons of added sugar per day, yet that's what many people consume unknowingly. At this point, you have two choices. Allow the domino effect to continue or interrupt the chain and reverse it. The good news? Your body is equipped with remarkable self-healing intelligence. Within just a few days of reducing sugar, insulin begins to drop, visceral fat shrinks, the liver gets to rest, the brain stabilizes, the kidneys recover. Even your immune system, the final line of defense, will bounce back. And no, you don't have to quit sugar completely. You just need to understand it, choose it wisely, and respect your biology. Every bite you take sends a signal: destruction or healing. The only question left is, which signal will you choose to send?